RetroDaze.
We talk a lot about the biggest and best toys of our youth, but it isn't always the big-ticket items that stoke our collective nostalgia. Often it was the various trinkets, found in the strangest of places, that made life so magical. I'm talking about things like the 25-cent machine toys, vending machine stickers, freebie items from fan club memberships, mail-away gifts, fast food premiums, and the mother of all knickknacks, the cereal box prize. Getting our parents to buy those boxes of sugary wonder, often inspired by some of our favorite pop culture franchises, was a big enough win. But when you added the extra benefit of a free toy inside the box, well, now we're talking about something legendary, at least to our little kids' brains. There were two types of kids. The ones who waited patiently for the prize to fall out into their bowl, and the ones who went digging for the prize, even going so far as to employ sneaky tactics like opening the box from the bottom. This second group would jam their hands into the bag of cereal all the way to the elbow, digging and pushing and scooping for the hidden prize. Sometimes they'd even dump the whole bag into an oversized bowl to recover the buried treasure. Call me a sucker, but I was always a wait for the prize to fall from the box sort of kid. Before long, prizes were placed outside the bag liner, probably in an effort to further separate food from non-food items and avoid potential choking hazards, which made scoring the toy even easier. At that point, it became a matter of which sibling would open the box first. Another, less frequent possibility was to find the prize attached to the outside of the box, or even be a part of the box itself. The final type of cereal box premium was the mail-in variety, often requiring you to collect a number of box tops that you'd send to the manufacturer. This last type, though it's one of my absolute favorites for a few reasons, will be saved for its own video. According to most sources, the first cereal premiums were awarded at the register for purchasing a box of Kellogg's Corn Flakes all the way back in 1909. With 2 boxes of cereal, cashiers handed over a copy of The Funny Jungle Land Moving Pictures book, which appeared in a number of varying editions through 1937. Mike Chasser explains on his website, Poetry and the Popular Culture, that this was a trifold booklet with 2 sets of 6 panels inside that, when flipped back and forth on their stapled hinges, allows the reader or user to superimpose the body parts and verse captions of one set of animals onto another. If we're talking about prizes specifically inserted into the box, it gets a little harder to track, as most other cereal manufacturers, including Nabisco, General Mills, Quaker Oats, Malt-O-Meal, and others, began to place prizes in their cereals roughly around the same time. Perhaps one of the coolest interactive toys to appear as early cereal box prizes were the coveted baking powder submarines, invented in 1953 by brothers Benjamin and Harry Hirsch and sold in 1954 to Kellogg's, who would be the first to use them as cereal premiums, though these would be of the mail-in variety, costing 25 cents and a cereal box top. Later, these small plastic subs came in a variety of cereals, this time in the box itself, proving their effectiveness as sale incentives. Frosted Flakes had an action boat, and later even a diving Tony the Tiger. Cap'n Crunch had the Super Sub, Rice Krispies had the Atom Sub, and Cheerios had the Atomic Submarine. These little toys weren't only relegated to cereal boxes, though. In fact, a few years ago, I talked about getting one from an advertisement in the back of a comic book. In that same Gen X grown-up video, I demonstrated the diving and rising action of a reproduction baking powder sub, which worked by packing baking powder into a small compartment at the bottom of the toy and allowing the resulting reaction to create carbon dioxide, causing the sub to first rise, expel the gas, and then dive again. It really was something of a magical experience to watch this tiny plastic sub bob up and down in the water, and even now, there's something to be said about experiencing that simple joy as an adult. Another popular premium, largely distributed through the 70s, were cereal box records. These flimsy, easily warped cardboard records with thin plastic coatings were usually the back panel of the cereal box, requiring consumers to carefully cut the record out in order to play. Despite the obvious downsides to crafting a playable record from a cereal box, these things were awesome! As kids, the easily obtained records were probably the first we'd ever owned, and we played them until the shallow grooves wore out. Some of the best were often related to Halloween in some way, like the 1979 boxes of Count Chocula, Frankenberry, and Boo Berry, each of which had a different record including The Monsters Go Disco, Count Chocula Goes to Hollywood, and Monster Adventures in Outer Space. Another version was the post-Honeycomb Ghost Story records from 1977, which included The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, The Miser's Gold, and The Hitchhiker. These recordings were stripped right from the 1975 album Famous Ghost Stories, produced and narrated by Wade Denning, and boasted incredible artwork. There were a couple other releases, perhaps also from Honeycomb Serial, though details are sketchy. These other series included The Haunted House, The Ghost in the Attic, Sounds of the Unknown, and the 1978 Pickwick Records release of Lonely Lonely. Of course, spooky stories weren't the only ones being released. There were also the 1969 Sugar Crisp and Alphabets records, The Archies. This series was even more ambitious as there were multiple records, each with 4 songs. Popular tunes included Sugar Sugar, You Know I Love You, and the theme song for the animated series, The Archie Show. Other cereal box records over the decades included Bobby Sherman, the Jackson 5, the Monkees, the Toucan Sam Workout, and many more. There were a few guaranteed easy sells for us as kids, and one of them was anything glow-in-the-dark. Cereal manufacturers had clearly gotten the memo because all manner of uniquely cool glow-in-the-dark items started appearing in cereals, and we did our part by buying all of them. 1976 boxes of Super Sugar Crisp contained one of 4 glow-in-the-dark monster heads. But these weren't any old monsters, they were universal monsters, including the Mummy, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and Phantom of the Opera. They also doubled as finger puppets. You know what? At this point, let's just assume everything else in this section glows in the dark, so I don't have to keep saying it. Deal? Okay, another Monster Head set came from Kellogg's in 1989, and they are arguably not as ambitious. For one thing, they were generic monsters, including a skeleton and ape-like creatures. For another, they were only half heads with an eyelet, perhaps to turn them into necklaces? Although the Universal Monster finger puppets are more sought after, these potential pendants were still a favorite. In 1986, Kellogg's Fruit Loops and Corn Pops offered what they called Wacky Wall Walkers, which were a variation on the popular 25-cent machine toy you'd throw against a wall and watch it slowly climb down. Always a winner. In 1995, there was a Sugar Bear ornament. 1973 saw pins in Super Sugar Crisp, and in 1978, Captain Crunch gave away spooky jiggling pirates. The staff writer's personal favorite were the Captain Crunch Soggies figures circa 1986. Like all of these glowing toys, you had to charge them with a light to make them work, so in his divine brilliance, Mr. Writer balanced his Soggy next to the light bulb of a table lamp, then promptly forgot about it. When he finally remembered, he found it had melted into an even soggier mess than it began. Now, hold on a second there, Mr. Writer. I remember these figures too, but as I recall, they came in the Captain Crunch Island Adventure board game along with the Captain himself and the Sogmaster. Are you sure these were also cereal box prizes? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. He said, and I quote, "Prove me wrong, lameoid." So there you have it, the brains behind our research operation. You're obviously in good hands. As much fun as it was to dig for a prize in the box, getting a prize so big they had to strap it on the outside of the box was even more exciting. Perhaps the most well-known of these premiums was the huge, by cereal prize standards, Batman bank that came packed with Batman cereal from Ralston. The thick plastic bank was in the shape of Batman himself, with a couple well-placed stickers for his face, logo, and belt. On his back, there was another sticker advertising a Batman nightlight. The bank was clearly the highlight since the cereal was basically a Captain Crunch ripoff in the shape of bats. I mean, just look at all the promo stuff they had to offer, sometimes through mail-in deals, to get people to buy the cereal. A glow-in-the-dark Frisbee, a t-shirt, comics, and that bank. Ralston was truly the king of producing licensed cereals from beloved franchises that were extremely okay. Like truly mind-bogglingly mediocre. I just can't believe how shockingly ordinary the cereal was. Lucky thing the box art and premiums were so cool. And Ralston was at it again in 1991 with the Addams Family cereal, this time offering a selection of 4 different Figaro flashlights strapped to the box with shrink wrap. These weren't nearly as big as the Batman Bank, but they did something, which was always a huge selling point for kids, even if that something was shining light. Ooh, majestic. The offer included Thing, It, Fester, and Lurch, all of which looked great with a significant amount of sculpted and painted detail. While almost any prize in a cereal box was exciting for kids, obviously the more detailed and interactive, the better. Sure, a plastic ring is great, but what about a real working watch? Over the years, a few different cereals offered free watches as premiums, but it was exceedingly rare for them to actually be inside the box. One such prize was the honeycomb watch that came in new hot colors and displayed both time and date according to the box. Others from over the years, though in some cases mail-away items, have been the Inspector Gadget watch, the Cheerios watch, Hot Wheels watches, and perhaps the newest item we've discussed today, Shrek digital watches from 2003. We definitely overfilled our cereal bowls this week because there were literally hundreds of other insanely cool prizes we could have discussed. But, as always, that just means 2 things. 1, we will absolutely be revisiting this topic for future videos. And 2, what were some of your favorite cereal box prizes of your youth? I would love to hear about it down in the comments. And if you enjoy our content, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and maybe even activating that ubiquitous notification bell. It really does make a huge difference. Let's meet again next week to celebrate yesteryear right here on RetroDaze.
Clicky clicky.